Welcome to another Britflicks.com podcast. My name's Stuart Wright, and today's guest is writer, producer, and star of Prizefighter, The Life of Jem Belcher, Matt Hookings. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Now, before we start, we should just probably let people know, where can they see your film?
Film is out now on Amazon Prime. Should be still sort of top of the radar or on the exclusive list. You don't have to look too far for it. So yeah, it's available on Amazon in the UK and the US. And it's having a theatrical release in different countries elsewhere over the next couple of months. So it's getting about, which is good. As
a person with three hats on for this film, I'm going to start with the writing one. I'm a writer myself, so it's kind of this is where my bigged interest lies. What for you was the kernel of the idea to do this biopic that led to this film that people can see today? Where did it start for you as a writer?
I was doing stunt work on a Russell Crowe film about 10, 11 years ago.
Okay.
And this older gentleman came up to me and basically thought I was my dad, who was a British heavyweight champion. My dad was a boxer called David Bomber Pierce.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a British champion in the 80s. And anyone that was a fan of boxing or alive during the 80s probably knew who my dad was. He had a very textured life. He was dubbed, the Welsh Rocky himself. So he had a really interesting journey. He's not alive. He passed away when I was 11. So for this guy seeing me looking at the spitting image of
that's amazing.
Of my dad was a bit of a shock. And when I say the spitting image, I mean we look, just crazy. I mean, I know people can't see this on video, but that's me at the top and that's my dad at the bottom in 19.
Good Lord. Yeah, it's for the listeners' benefit, the likeness is uncanny.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I never sort of clicked on until later on how much we actually look like. So he was telling me about my dad and, he was essentially a fan of my dad's. And he was telling me about this article he was reading about my dad in this trade magazine. And next to the article, my dad was this slide on Jem Belcher.
Oh, right.
So that's where it was born. And that's where the sort of the rabbit hole.
And for a story like that, where it's about somebody's life story, and just for the writer listening who might be thinking of something that's in the public domain, is there intellectual property you have to gain to do something like this, or did you base it on a memoir in the first place, or did you just take from public domain and build your own story?
There was hardly anything really written.
Okay.
Specifically on Jem. So he was just this unknown, forgotten hero of the time. Yet he had this, such textured life. He was youngest ever champion at 19, blind at 20, and deaf by the time he was 30. So that was like my pitch for the story.
Yeah.
And he died 221 years ago, something crazy. So there wasn't much out there. So that was a good thing for a writer in the sense it allowed me to have more creative freedom, bring in things that I didn't know or someone else didn't know. And also I wanted to kind of highlight the success and the celebrity and the fame that he should have been, because like I said, not many people know anything about him.
Yeah, and yet it was a new name to me when the film came along.
Yeah. And yet I read one thing that he wrote, this treatise on boxing, and it just blew my mind. He described the scientific approach to the sport. He described using your brain and your skill set and your technique rather than brute strength. And, for someone 220 years ago from a poor background, it was a very intellectual read. It had that kind of Muhammad Ali-esque personality about him in the way that, he spoke differently. He was way ahead of his time. So I was just fascinated by his story. I wanted to be, really true to certain things that happened in his life.
Mm-hmm.
But I also wanted to really highlight the impact that he had on the sport. So in a way, some people will say, I think it's quite good that there wasn't that much information on him, because it allowed me to have more creative freedom and bring things in that, I thought or I believed, or, certain things that we couldn't prove happened or didn't know if they did or didn't happen. So, I just did, with the writing side, I don't recommend anyone doing this, but I did two years of research. I watched 160 boxing films from 1927 till now. And I just wanted to get my head around like everything that had ever been documented on boxing, or even other films related to the story of, Amadeus was a huge influence. So it just, it took me forever to write it. I didn't come from a writing background.
Mm-hmm.
I'd written a couple of shorts and, made some stuff with my company, but this was another sort of journey that just.
If it's not something you sort of naturally did, then so what became for you with that kind of free running? Then, if there wasn't an obvious story to tell, and you began to weave a story around obviously some key facts of the story, what for you became the main storytelling challenges?
Well, this is, just adding on to this bonkers story. It is where it became more interesting in a weird way. So, and it links to me eventually playing the lead. So I started finding different bits of information about Jem that I didn't really want to play the lead at the time. I just wanted I was fascinated by the story, and I thought this is a really good pitch story. Mm-hmm. Youngest ever champion, blind at 22, dead by the time he was 30, and he's around. He was alive during a time that had social, economical change. There was a war going on. There was things changing in the world.
Yeah, the Industrial Revolution was just kicking off, wasn't it?
Exactly. So all that really interested me, and the period drama aspect of it, and the birth of boxing, the birth of the sport. So my pitch was: there's never been a boxing film set this far back, which there hasn't, and there's never been one that explored the birth of the sport. So that was like my driving force. And then a couple of weird things started to happen. I started figuring out that he was a very similar height, similar weight, and similar size to me, which was like, okay, that's one thing. And then a couple of weeks later, I found out that, I was focusing on this fight that he had with a guy called Henry Pierce. And Henry Pierce was originally from Bristol, and, it's dubbed today as the forgotten fight of the century. Mm-hmm. Henry Pierce's last name is the same last name as my dad. Of course,
yeah. No, the minute you said it, I was thinking, my word, is that the other connection?
And Bristol to Newport is 15-minute drive away. So that was the second thing. And then it gets weirder. Then I found out his mum couldn't find anything on his mum at all, other than his mum's name was Mary, and my mum's name is Mary. And then the third thing, which I kind of triggered, I go, right, I have to. The thing that really hit me that when I thought I have to tell this story and I have to play the lead, play the part, was he died on my birthday. So he died on the 30th of July, which was just recently. And I just thought that's too many weird coincidences that, could have fallen into place. So, I went straight into training as a boxer, and I started training as a boxer for 4 or 5 years. And just led down this rabbit hole of drafts. I mean, for writers listening, it's hard to advise the amount of work that I put in, but I stopped counting, and I mean this completely honestly, after about 300 drafts. So this script went through.
So in that sense, and when you were doing those repeated drafts, then what became the storytelling challenges for the film for you? What was making you having to do all those drafts? What was so challenging?
One of the big challenges was there was so many good characters, there's so much history, there's so much, even the way that people lived at the time. There was so many side stories that you could have gone off in. And I really wanted to focus and keep it focused on Jem and tie in a family story and make it really about his DNA and everything that he does and what happens to him and his rise and fall.
Yeah.
But there was loads of other interesting, there was loads of female fighters at the time. There was Tom Molyneux, Tom Cribb. There's all these famous boxers who people do know about, Danny Mendoza. And it was the key challenge was keeping the focus on Jem and his story, because it could have very easily gone into another direction. And, maybe that opens itself up for a TV series or a prequel or a sequel. But that was like the main thing of keeping him focused. And, every time you send a draft out, someone picks up on something else, and someone picks up on something that's really good and you want to change. And it just kept changing and evolving and evolving. And like I said, I probably did. 300 is being conservative. I did so many drafts of this basically.
Yeah, no, amazing. That's an amazing journey.
And I wanted to make sure the script was ready. So when I was relatively an unknown actor. So if I am pitching a relatively, tasty, ambitious project, I needed someone like your Russell Crowe or your Ray Winstone to pick up that script and go, this script is really good. We have to do this. We don't really care who's behind it. Because the material was so good. So I had to make the material so good that whoever read it would just go.
No, and I think that's an important message for writers out there, really, is that, there's only going to be I guess the one shot at that. And if you want them to be interested, you better give them the best effort you can, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. And even my one advice, and I've been through this and I've made the mistakes, even if you think it's the version, don't send that version. Send the next version, because you just, anything can pull anyone off. You don't know, even just spelling mistakes and different things, it's really difficult to get right. And it was incredibly difficult. It was one of the hardest things that I went through, but, it made me learn how to write. And I consider myself quite a good writer now. So it's something that another sort of aspect that I learned to, bring to the mix, which I really enjoyed doing. That.
Brilliant. Well, look, you've already hinted at this. For those that don't know the film, it also stars. Looking at the poster on IMDb, you've got yourself sandwiched between Russell Crowe and Ray Winstone, which is not bad billing to be on, is it? So if I flip you to your producer's point of view, how do you get Russell Crowe and Ray Winstone into this movie? How did that process go for you? I mean, you've explained getting the script to a point that you thought it's going to attract their attention, but obviously it's not as easy as just simply, we like this, let's be in it. You've got to get them to read it first.
Well, I came from a stunt background, and I built up a bunch of contacts over the years, working with some incredible people. And one of those key contacts was a stunt coordinator called Steve Dent.
Yeah.
And he's a very good friend, and he's done a ton of stuff. And anyone in the industry will probably know Steve Dent and his work. So I knew Steve had access to certain talent, and I just took the script to him and said, Steve, this is ready. Steve had already helped me make the short film. We made a short film version in 2016.
Okay.
And we shot it on Steve's farm, and I just said to him, I took it to him, I think the first lockdown, and I said, it's ready. And he read it and he said, yeah, it's good to go. I'm going to send it straight to Ray. Had a very, very, very quick conversation with Ray. Not quick as in the length, but we spoke almost within days. And he sent it to straight to Russell's manager as well. And then I took over the communication from there. So Ray was a slightly easier pull, because it was asking Ray Winstone to play the lead in a comfortable role about boxing, which he's a massive fan of.
Yeah.
He knew my dad. The first thing Ray said to me was, I knew a dad, kid, and well enough to have gone to the fights with him, and later told me some other things. So he knew my dad, and that was a relatively straightforward pull in that sense. And then Russell's team was harder. That was a year of negotiations back and forth.
Okay.
They said no three times, sorry. And I just didn't stop. I just didn't have it in my mind that he was going to say, he was not going to do this. He was perfect for the role. There was no one really, there's no one else really that exists with the same gravitas that he has to play a very, brutal, old and drunken boxer. I mean, people are throwing names like Tom Hardy and Hugh Jackman, but they just don't have that. They didn't have that same caliber of what was required for the character.
Yeah, and I guess coming off the back of, from in my lineage of watching films, it's like coming off the back of him being in Kelly Gang as well. You've kind of already seen him in this period very recently as well.
Yeah, that was, and I really enjoyed him in Kelly Gang, actually, and I think it's an underrated film. But yeah, that's exactly it. He'd already played that character. He was already moving into that world, which fitted very well for what we were doing. So it was a lot of back and forth, and it was a lot of moving parts with Russell and his team, and traveling and locations and this and COVID, and him going through some personal stuff as well. So it was it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy.
Well, congratulations. Like, but you by your own admission, you say you're a relatively unknown actor, and in this film, having watched it, you're playing at close quarters with both those heavyweights of acting. So how did you prepare yourself for those moments? Because there's a lot of them.
Yeah, it's weird because I've been doing this for sort of 10, 12 years, and I've been blessed enough to work with everyone. I've worked, with with some really, really amazing people. I've worked with Angelina Jolie. I've worked closely with Michael Caine, Tom Cruise. I've been in those circles for a long time, but they were in a very small or specific way. So the change for this was, being the lead role in a film with Ray and Russell and other amazing cast, Martin Posak and Julian Glover and Stephen Burkhoff and Jodie May, and the list kind of goes on. We've got a really stellar cast in this film. But I just, I prepared. It sounds like the easy answer. I prepared so well for the role. I knew the characters inside out, not just mine. I knew theirs because I'd written it.
Of course.
I trained as a boxer for 4 or 5 years, so I was really comfortable with the movement of boxing. And maybe not to sound corny, but maybe I was just kind of born to do it. There was no for me when I'm put in those situations. You've got to do. You've got to go to that level that they're at and work with them and be seen as an equal. Or you kind of get scared and mess it up. So I just had to, again, I just prepared myself. And just probably one of your other questions is going to be, how did you manage to keep the financing together and play the lead role? And the simple answer is what I just said. I had all the information. I couldn't go at this like Sylvester Stallone went at this with Rocky, where it was just like, I'm playing the lead and that's it. And nothing else is happening. I couldn't do that with this. I had to be the sole person that had the most amount of information about the characters, about the movement, about even just hiring like crew and stuff. A lot of my friends and people I'd worked with before I'd hired. So I put every bit of information in this film in my head, which meant that I couldn't be replaced. And one of the financiers made a joke just before we started filming, saying like, we couldn't replace you even if we wanted to. It doesn't matter if someone famous stepped in. We couldn't replace you because you have too much information and you have too many people that are committed to this film for you.
What do you think? What do you think you learned as an actor playing opposite? Because you are. They're not just in your film. You're playing opposite them. You're acting in key scenes with these people, and obviously for a lengthy part of the film, you're side by side with Ray Winstone. So, what do you think? I mean, there's one thing to raise your game and that, but obviously over the duration of the film, what do you think you as an actor benefited from? Where do you think you kicked on from that experience?
I benefited so much because I was working around, just incredibly talented people. Just, Ray was just like going to school every day with your best mates. It was just comfortable. We just laughed. We went for dinner most nights, and it was just fun. We just had a nice little bond and he, because of the amount of work, I think people could see I was putting in. They began to build a trust after a couple of days of filming, where people could see, Matt is putting in the work. He's really giving it everything. So there was a nice trust building in that sense. Everyone was different in a weird way. Working with Stephen Burkhoff was incredible because I just sat there and watched this guy perform, and just was just so incredibly just the gravitas of him just stepping into the room and performing was incredible. And Julian Glover and Martin would just light up every scene. So again, you had something to play off every character. Russell's stillness and the way he just, his presence in a scene was so strong. So for me, I learned so many life lessons, not just acting lessons, like being around these people. I learned so many life lessons, which I'll take with me, forever. But I think it was, again, I was very prepared. I knew the character inside out, and I was either working with friends or people I really wanted to work with who were right for the role. So it kind of just fitted, and I think that's the best thing to do. So many people want to just work with someone for many reasons, or this or that, or clout or whatever it may be. I think you've got to, if you work with the right people in the right project, it's like a team, right? It's like a sports team,
and it's fairly intense on a film set, isn't it? So you don't really want it to be any of it to be arduous unnecessarily.
No, of course. And, there's always going to be moments where someone wants to do something and, whether it's right or wrong, it's tricky. But I think, I don't know, I was so, the stunt work taught me to be so tuned with being on set.
Yeah.
I was so, I've had so much experience being on set and around set and what works and how to be professional. So it was just those experiences came back to me, and that knowledge. Before that, I used to be a background artist. I used to be an extra, which I highly recommend as well, because you get to just see and learn so many things.
I've done plenty of it myself.
Yeah, I mean, people say, I'm just not afraid to kind of admit how much of a good experience that was, because you get to see and watch everything and learn so much.
Absolutely. Now, Daniel Graham's your director. Was that your choice as the producer, or was that somebody brought into the project for you?
No, it was my choice, and I had worked with Daniel before on a film in Malta called The Grand Duke of Corsica with Timothy Spall and Peter Stormare. And Daniel was a friend who, he was one of those people that I was sending the script to along the way. He's a very good writer, Daniel. And we'd already done a film together. We'd already gone through that experience. So I produced The Grand Duke of Corsica, and I also played a character in it that was basically the third supporting, or the third lead. It was Tim Spall, Peter Stormare, and then myself. So it was a kind of strategic, smart move in the sense, because I needed, if anything ever happened where someone said, "Oh, wait there, why don't we replace Matt with Miles Teller or someone that is stupidly famous or whatever," I needed someone like Daniel who could say, "Well, wait there, no, I've worked with Matt as a producer and as an actor, and I can vouch for him," which he did, and we'd already gone through. This project was so personal and so meaningful, and we really didn't have the time for someone new or someone to come in and not fit or gel very quickly. So me and Daniel, we already had that relationship, which
now film is is considered to be a director's medium, unlike TV, which is more of a writer's medium. So in what sense, what did Daniel bring to the script that sort of really took it on for you? Took it up that level. You've lived with it. You've done your 300 plus drafts. You've got your casting in place, and now Daniel's developing it for script, or you're shooting it or whatever. What were the elements for you that really sort of then went up to where you were surprised at where it went, so to speak?
Well, he was able to work then very, very closely with each cast. So that was the first thing. I had to focus on my own character. He was able to work closely with Ray and Jodie and the family and different things. So that was number one. He's a very he's good with people. So he's an actors driven director in that sense. So he was good with people, and also he protected me in many ways, because there was times where it got really just difficult and tricky, and the financing and all these producing things that were just causing problems. And he was there, for support and help in that sense, just to protect me, because I didn't have anyone to protect me in that sense. Mm-hmm. And really, when I started acting, I should have just been the actor, and there was all these other things coming up all the time. But he'd worked with high level cast before. He's done 3 films. His last film was with Tim Spall and Peter Stormare, and his first film was with Willem Dafoe. Mm-hmm. So I needed someone that cast were able to trust, and also we worked with the same DOP, which then bringing them two together allowed them to elevate it further in terms of the shots and the angles and different stuff, and choosing different things in that sense. And obviously we had Steve Dent and myself and a really great fight coordinator called Billy Clements, who were able to focus on the action. So it was just separating each area and letting them focus on where their skills attributed to attributed to best. And he just I was very aware that there was no way I could make every decision, and having someone with fresh eyes being able to look at it was a nice thing to have, because otherwise you get too close to it and too bogged down.
Indeed. Well, look, give it. It's a boxing film. For anyone who's not seen it, won't be surprised to learn it's quite a physical film, and in terms of what you have to go through as a character and other characters in it. And it looks very real. And like you say, you spent 5 months preparing to, 5 years, training yourself up. to be able to behave like a boxer. Once it came to the shoot, what do you remember being the most challenging scene or sequence to pull off in front of cameras?
That's a good question.
Did you catch that fish? That's a bit of a spoiler for people, but did you catch that fish with your bare hands?
I did, yeah. The fish wasn't real, so it's okay. It was a fake.
Go on, sorry, I interrupted.
It's just a good bit of acting. That I was quite impressed because I somehow made it look real. It wasn't real fish, so spoiler alert. Do you know what? I don't know. I think I know what. I definitely know the areas that I felt very comfortable in, and there was 2 moments in the film where I thought, you know what, I'm kind of born or meant to do this, because I just felt so confident in that particular aspect of the role. The end fight was very brutal and it was very real, and it's one of the best sort of boxing scenes and fights you're going to see in films, just because it was real. I had a real boxing fight with an ex-boxer, so he had his ribs were bruised, and tendonitis in my arm, I slipped my eyelid. There's loads of things that happened that were real in this film, and we just wanted to give it the the authenticity and realness that it deserved, especially dubbing it a film about the birth of boxing. So I mean, look, there was I think actually I do know I do remember a very challenging Daniel and Martin Kosak, who's just this unbelievable actor, just lights up the scene. He's been in so many things. Martin is incredible. I remember walking on set one day and I had this page of dialogue that we had specific for this scene, and for some reason Daniel and Martin had tweaked and changed it a night before or 2 nights before, and it didn't get sent to me. So I turned up on set with a completely new, different scene that I had to kind of learn very quickly. Which was a bit challenging, but then the physical side was also very challenging. The moves and getting hurt, just got battered throughout the whole thing.
That's what I'm getting at, really. I mean, you get the sense of it. It's a very gritty, sort of visceral film. So I just wondered how much of that and what toll did that take on you? Yeah,
I'm quite a strong-minded, tough individual, but I ended up in hospital. I had anxiety, I had panic attacks. I went through so many things. My ribs were, like I said, my ribs are bruised. I've got tendonitis in my elbow. My nose, broke. One of the scenes, I had this really specific contact lens, which we were doing a fight scene in Lithuania, and I got hit to the floor, and it split the contact lens, which basically affected my eye, and I had to go and get that checked. So yeah, I went through everything. I mean, and no sleep, and then filming 12 to 15 hours a day, getting home, checking emails on the producing side, then also rewriting stuff and adapting stuff, and moving from Wales to England to Lithuania to Malta. It really did destroy me in many ways, and it wasn't. It wasn't always the best experience, because there was just so many challenges and so many problems you just had to overcome.
Well, look, let's end this on a bright note then. Final question would be: what's maybe one of your happiest memories from the shoot that you want to recount for us?
I think it clicked onto me a period afterwards what I've kind of achieved, and I think the achievement of getting a film off the ground with that kind of cast and caliber and writing it and being so heavily involved is just unheard of today. It doesn't exist. And even if you compare it to films that have done that in the past, there's basically Rocky or Good Will Hunting. So I feel more proud of myself in terms of what the achievement of getting off the ground. The filming was incredible. I really enjoyed working with the cast, and like I said, me and Ray had some really, really funny moments, just, really laughing to ourselves about situations and having a good old talk. Working with Russell Crowe was just incredible. I love the film inside of it, and I love the fight sequence. I really enjoyed the end fight sequence because it was full of people, and me and Ricky were just giving it our all. And, both of our dads had passed away, and we had this really nice heartfelt moment, which just felt amazing. So the filming was just, the film inside was incredible, although it was challenging in the background and everything going on. Working with these people and being able to make this film was I still can't process it. It's a bit jaded because I still can't. I'm still doing all these things and talking about the film, so it's still very fresh in my mind, even though we finished filming in November. So, the whole experience has taught me so much. Not just in the creative side of the acting and performing, but life lessons as well. I'll take that with me till the end. That was just an incredible experience in that sense.
Well, look, thank you very much for giving us your time on the Britflicks podcast. Prizefighter, The Life of Jem Belcher, is available now on Prime Video. So, yeah, just gives me to say thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's great talking to you, Stuart.